Instagram Live on a Friday, and it's our last session before Christmas, and we're going to be talking about something really close to my heart. We're going to be talking about how you overcome imposter syndrome and get up on stage or get up on Zoom, because that's what we're doing now, isn't it? And really own what you have to say in a way that is yours and is authentic and isn't perfect, but who cares about perfect anymore? It's not what we're doing. So we're going to think about really owning whatever stage you are invited to speak on. My name's Caroline Goyder. I'm a voice coach. I'm the author of Find Your Voice. And actually, we're going to be talking about a chapter within the book. The last chapter of Find Your Voice really focuses on this. The reason I think we should talk about this is because so often what I hear is not just women, but often women, men as well, to be honest, saying, I've been invited to speak, but I said no. Or knowing that they could offer themselves as a speaker on an online conference or a real conference when we get back to that, and just not doing it because they feel that they don't have anything to say, or they feel that they might get nervous, or it feels a bit visible, it feels a bit vulnerable. Now here's what I think. I think that's really sad, because life is short. And what I know about a Psychologies audience, and we're here for the Brilliant Psychologies magazine, is that you are all savvy, you all have a sense of who you are, you all have something to offer. So why not, the next time you're invited to speak, say yes? And what I'm going to help you do in the next 20 minutes or so is give you a 5-step process to get you from, what do I say, to walking out, going online, starting to speak at the conference, or when we get back to that world, in my dreams, walking out on stage. I'm going to use as a basis for discussion a TED talk that I did a few years ago, because I had massive imposter syndrome when I put myself forward for it. I was asked to put myself forward because I was coaching for them. And when they said yes, I just thought, I can't do this. I don't have anything to say. And I did it, and it's been watched well over 8 million times, which is insane. So as we talk through this 5-point structure, I'm going to talk you through how that applies to the talk I did. If you have questions at any point, just pop them in the chat, and I'll pick them up towards the end. I want to give you the structure first. So, say you have been invited to speak at something, and say you followed my invitation to say yes. What's the first thing that you should do? So the first thing I would say you should do is do a bit of research, because it's interesting. And it's helpful to find out, why is this event happening? Who are these people? What do they want? Now, the reason that's so important is that, I don't know about you, but as a speaker, I feel worse if I don't know what they want and if I don't know how I can help. If I know what the need is, like next week I know I'm speaking at an event about resilience. So I'm going to spend this weekend really reading up on resilience and really understanding my audience. Because then when I start to speak, I feel that I've got something to offer. Now, there's a brilliant writer called Ben Zander, who was for a long time the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. And he calls this being in contribution, not competition. And what he says is, when you're thinking about contribution, imposter syndrome goes, because it doesn't matter if you're good, bad, better than anybody else. You're there as a human being with something to offer, to help. So the research phase, that why contribution phase, is so important. Then really start to dig into the pain. As any good salesperson knows, when you speak, you are persuading. So it's not dissimilar to what salespeople have to do. And what salespeople have to do is that second step of pain. So really think about, and the coach Casey Baker calls this the situation. It's a very American way of putting it, but it's the situation for your audience. So when I looked at my TED talk, the talk was called The Surprising Secret, can't say it, which is hilarious, The Surprising Secret to Speaking with Confidence. Don't trip over your S's would be a good start. And so I thought about my audience. They were people who probably worried about speaking. Number one fear, more than death, right? And so then I thought, well, how can I help them? What's their pain? And often it's really helpful, if you're an expert on something, to go a few steps back. Now, I still wouldn't call myself an expert on speaking because there's so much to learn. But what I knew is that as a voice coach, I had a few tricks up my sleeve. And so I took a few steps back to when I was learning about voice and messing up on stage big time. And I started from that pain point. And often that taking steps back to before you knew the thing you're talking about really can help you to come up with the material. So second step, how can I help? What's their pain? Then, at that point, pull together some stories of your pain around that pain point. The story that I used was a moment on stage where I really, really messed up badly. And that became the founding story for that TEDx talk I did. Now, once you've got that pain point, step 3, really important, is to think about what you believe. Now, this comes from a really brilliant speech coach called Casey Baker. And she says, write down, you could do it now, take a piece of paper, write down on the piece of paper 5 things you believe about this pain point. So if we go back to my TEDx, the pain point was that people are really frightened about speaking and that they feel that they can't get better. So I sat down and wrote down my beliefs about this problem. And what I realized is that what I had to learn to overcome this problem in myself was to unlock the instrument, my body. Because as a speaker, I was really nervous. I was really fast. I sometimes am still fast on Instagram Live. And I had to learn how to get into my body to learn to speak well. Now, so those beliefs, I've given you the first one, became the foundation for the talk. Because another belief was anybody can learn to be a good speaker. It's like learning to drive. Another one was if you really learn how to speak, you can enjoy speaking in front of an audience, no matter how scared you feel at first. Now, the second belief, anybody can learn to be a good speaker, also gave me a story that I told in the talk. So in writing down these 5 beliefs, and you might have more than that, you start to think, what's the story that illustrates that belief? And I went to the story of Demosthenes in the TED talk, and he was a speaker who started out really bad, booed out of the assembly in ancient Greece, and then eventually, with lots of practice, which is what we talk about in the TEDx, he became one of the greatest speakers of his age. So you take your beliefs, and then you think, what story demonstrates that this belief is true? Once you've got your beliefs, then you start to think about the transforming insight. And this is another Casey Baker idea. She's well worth checking out, actually. And Casey Baker's idea around the transforming insight is that, I love this, if you have a real insight for an audience and you share it on stage, it kind of gives you a reason to be there, right? If there's one thing you know in the world that maybe other people don't know, that's the engine for you being on stage. And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It just has to be that kind of top tip that you have found really useful in life. And that transforming insight, I think, can be the thing that unlocks imposter syndrome for speakers. A good way to find that transforming insight is to think, if you said to the audience, if you remember one thing, remember this. And that often elicits for you the transforming insight. And for me, in the TEDx, it was around breath. Because, I'm all about breath, because breath for me was the thing that took me from panic to power. Because It's funny, on Instagram Live, I still chest breathe because you've got to stare at yourself, which is super weird. But on a stage, I don't do it, because the thing that shifted me from panic to power was learning how to breathe diaphragmatically. So that transforming insight became the real engine for the talk. And once I knew I had that transforming insight, the body is the key to your confidence, the breath is the key to your confidence, then I went online and started to search for props. And that's when I found this prop designed by this fantastic guy called George McCallum, round the corner from me in South London, that is a man's torso shaped like a chest of drawers. So this process of what are the 5 things that I believe about this problem, and then what's my transforming insight around this problem, can be a very creative process. And you start coming up with stuff that you go, actually, this is really useful. And at that point, you stop worrying so much about, am I going to be any good? Are they going to hate it? Am I going to be perfect? Because you go, do you know what? This is really helpful. And so just do those things. Step into the audience's shoes, think about the audience, think about their pain point, then think about the beliefs you have around moving on from that pain point, and then really clarify it into a transforming insight. And then you've got the kind of heart of a good talk. Then the next step is unpack it. Now this is, Casey Baker calls this the accordion section, and I love that as well, because if you think about an accordion as an instrument, it can be big or small. You know, you can pull it out to here or you can bring it into there. And what she says, which really helped me when I did a course with her years ago, was that the accordion section is lovely because you might be asked to speak for an hour, in which case the accordion becomes big. Or you might be asked to speak for 10 minutes, more likely perhaps on online conferences, and so the accordion becomes small. But what you do at that point is you think, what are the main things I need to teach an audience in order to learn how to overcome this pain point, in order to learn how to take on these beliefs, in order to learn this transforming insight. And then it's almost like being a teacher, you unpack those steps. Now, I'm all about the rule of 3, and any good speechwriter I've ever come across also likes the rule of 3. So I think when you're unpacking the accordion section, do it in 3 sections. What 3 steps does someone need to take to get them from the pain to the transforming insight? And in my talk, I had 3 props. It all came out of the design of the process. Within that lovely chest of drawers, and it's worth looking at because, oh my God, it's so fantastic, this chest of drawers. Within the drawers, we had 3 props. There was a diaphragm on felt. There was a little guitar, because I was talking about the instrument of the body. And there was a glass jar, which was empty, which I opened because it was about air. And so those 3 props became my 3 teaching points. And it's really nice to have props with you. If you're doing online conferences, props, they're a bit of fun and they're not slides, which, hallelujah, right? And if you're on stage, it's so fun to have quirky props with you because they make you feel like you've got something creative to offer, and also they really intrigue the audience. And I'm very happy that over 8 million people have watched this talk. But one of the things I know is that the reason so many people watched it is because when you click on the link on YouTube, there's a picture of me standing next to a half-naked chest of drawers. And so there's a kind of, if you're working on online conferences, having a quirky, unusual prop is going to really pull attention. It wasn't a plan, it wasn't an expectation, but it just kind of happened and it seemed to work. So you've got your accordion section, which is really teaching the audience how to do this. And you want to give them these nuggets of gold, of powerful information that they're going to take away and use. I think we can only ever remember 3 things, and I think you'll be lucky if they do. So just think, what's the one thing that I want these people to remember? And then add 2 more. And if you do a really great job, they'll remember all three things, but chances are they'll take away one, and that's enough. So you've got your accordion section, and then you need to start to wrap it up. You need to close powerfully. Now, if you've told a good story at the beginning, you might close with another powerful story at the end, a story maybe of you or someone else achieving this transforming insight, and you might paint a picture of what that's done for them, the result it's given them in life. You might give people a great statistic, you might give people a great quote, you might paint a vision, a picture for people of what will happen when they achieve this. You want something that really rounds it off. And when I'm working with people on putting these speeches together on a stage or on a video conference, what I'll say to them is really get the beginning and the end so honed that you could do it standing on your head. Because knowing that you have a powerful ending to come back to is just so nice. It's like coming home. And when I worked on my talk, I worked with two people. One of them was an amazing woman called Denise Graveline, who sadly died a few years ago, which I'm still just so sad about. She had a great site called The Eloquent Woman that you can still find. The other person was a stand-up comedy coach called Chris Head, who was also just so helpful. And what he really made me do, I mean, I'm no comedian, that's not really my thing, but what he made me do was hone the lines and hone the ending. And I'll let people watch the talk, but we created a really lovely last line which had a classic kind of comedy surprise nested within it. You set up the expectation and then you pull it away from people. And I'd been promising all the way through the talk this surprise. And so we gave them the surprise at the end. And although I got nervous at the beginning of the talk because there was all sorts of issues with aircon, I was so rehearsed, I practiced it so many times with Chris, and I was so confident about the last line that I was coming to that it gave me a real sense of ownership on stage. So the last few lines of a talk are really worth honing, and lots of people don't, because you're so relieved to get there that you just think, oh, that's over. But what I would say is give that ending lots of time and care and get it just so, because then no matter what happens, you will get there. Now, let's just see, because I can see there are questions coming through. Oh, like a university teacher. I don't know if that's any good or not. So, yes, Insight Marketing says research the event and the speakers and exhibitors. Yeah. Do your, in business they would say do your due diligence. And I think that's really important. And Insight to Marketing, we are talking about pulling together a speech. This will all be on the Psychologies site later on if you want to go back and watch it later. Good. I think we're all right for questions. We're not asking many questions today. If anybody would like to ask one, that is fine. But I'm going to sum up for people who are just joining. So if you want to create a really great talk, take these steps. First, work out your audience's pain point. Understand who they are, understand what they need. Second, think about how you can help. Think about your beliefs around this. What do you believe to be important to this audience? Then think about what is my transforming insight? What do I want to give these people? If I ask them to remember one thing, what do I want to give them? Then unpack it for them in the accordion section. Teach them the steps. Teach them how to achieve it. And then come to a really powerful close. And when you follow those steps, I promise you, you will feel when you log on to your online conference or when you stand on stage, you will feel like you have something to offer. And I come back as we close to the lines of this great speaker and conductor, Ben Zander, who says, when you're in contribution, there is no better. And so often the reason we don't speak is because we think, why me? What do I have to offer? Someone else knows more. But as he says, in contribution, you have something to give, so offer it with an open heart. And you know what? That's when you will really shine on stage. So I'm going to close there. When you all do your TED